I'm Diane Hullett, and welcome to the Best Life, Best Death podcast. I'm excited today to have Bradley Berman on with me. Hi, Bradley.
Hi, Diane. How are you?
Good. And Bradley and I actually met in person last week at the Boulder International Film Festival, where he was showing this wonderful, touching film called Jack Has a Plan. So I, of course, couldn't help myself, jumped out of my cinema seat, ran down and introduced myself. And I'm just really excited to talk more about this movie and bring it to a wider audience.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So tell us a little about Jack Has a Plan. I mean, I've been hearing about it for a few months on Facebook and so on, but
Oh, cool.
tell us about the film.
It's a 73-minute feature documentary, a personal documentary about my very close friend, Jack Tuller, who, as a young man, relatively young man in his early 30s, was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor and given 6 months to live. But he lived for 25 years. So that gave him a front row seat, like a kind of a unique experience with mortality, with the impermanent nature of life, and with an amazing comfort to discuss death openly. But even more than that, he was a lifelong performer, musician, and this charismatic, very funny guy. So he makes the ideal guide through the experience of like, how do you approach the end when you know it's coming? How do you resolve both the medical side of things, but also the personal family dynamics? Because a lot of us have kind of unresolved issues with life and family, and he went about making a plan for how to resolve those things. So we're now about halfway through a 35 film festival run all across the country, meeting people, sharing Jack's story, having discussions with a lot of end-of-life doulas, hospice care clinicians, palliative folks, and the general audience, general film buffs, because it's first and foremost a story. It's a film. It's not an advocacy film for any particular outcome. It's just the story of Jack Tuller and what happened to him.
That is so well put, Bradley. I found the thread of the story to be so moving, and Jack happens to be a good storyteller, as are you and the team that put this story together. And this was not your first movie, but it's not like you've been a filmmaker for your whole life.
No, well, I studied art and photography and filmmaking as a young man, and then I really primarily became a writer. A content guy and all different kinds of. I've worked in museums, I've worked on big websites, I've done a little bit of marketing, and I've been a journalist covering primarily transportation. I write for the New York Times and other publications about the kind of new breed of more eco-friendly cars. I've been doing that for 20 years, like well before Tesla even came about. So during that time, about already now, let's see, about 10 years ago, I decided to make a film about a local election in the Bay Area where I'm from. And that did well. And then it was called Nat Bates for Mayor. It was election in the Bay Area's kind of overlooked oil town, about the different political factions there. That's a feature, and that played on PBS locally and in film festivals. And then right at that same time, Jack, my good friend Jack, said, "Oh, well, your next film should be about me." And I'm like, "Why should it be about you?" I mean, I knew his unique story and I knew his unique personality, but I really was not keen to just launch into a film about him. But he convinced me, and especially, he had gone through a second bout of seizures. He had to say he was ill for 25 years might be a little bit of a stretch, because he had his first bout and then he had a reprieve for more than a decade. but always kind of wondering what was happening, because this was after surgery and after other kinds of treatment. So he he knew that his life expectancy was diminished as a result of having two brain surgeries, and he knew his capacities to think, to read, to reason, to have endurance, to do all kinds of things. He knew that was diminished, and so he had a lot of time to make a plan, and that's what he wanted the film to be about. And so we just over time we just decided to start and just hang out and record. And he was like you said, he's a great storyteller. So I would turn the camera on and he would start telling stories about what he was thinking about, or where he wanted to go that day, or about his parents, or about any number of things. And that got built up over a 6-year period. And it enabled me to see and to capture this trajectory of how do you have a truly like enlightened, compassionate experience in the final how do you write your life story, especially the final chapters.
And he really had what, like, Barbara Carnes, a great educator, has referred to as like precious time. Like, he really had this extended precious time with his wife, with his family, to kind of say, and with friends were so dear to him. It's so clear in the film, to say, how do I want to write this story? Yeah, I think it's so interesting that part of that to him was, let's make a film. And it does seem like he had this impetus to share wider than his circle,
You
so that
did.
people could learn from it. I mean, as you said, it's not a film that promotes a certain point of view or has a right idea, and yet it says this is one person's experience and this is what he did.
Yes. I mean, he was funny in how he did it. He used to, I would say, well, why do you want to do this? He said, well, he was a big jazz fan. He said, Louis Armstrong has been, has passed away decades, and people are still enjoying his music and love it. It's all around the world in some small way. And it's even in the film. He says, I just want to tell a little story. I just want to leave a little bit of a legacy.
Yeah. Yeah. And to happen to have a friend who was a filmmaker who could do this and bring it forward. I really valued, I mean, you must have gone over hours and hours and hours of film, because one of the things that's a thread in the film is just the simple everyday, like just having a cup of coffee and having a conversation and going for a walk. And you described that you would make little clips for him to see.
Right. Like the traditional or sort of textbook way to make a documentary is, first of all, you plan it out, the whole thing. Like you have an intention that it's going to be a feature film or a short or whatever it is. We didn't do any of that.
Right. You kind of create the trajectory that will say the message you want it to say. And that isn't what you did.
Right. You start at the end, you say, like, this is the message I want to deliver, and how do I build up a story to do that? I mean, that's one kind of genre of this. Instead, we just started, and I kind of lost my train of thought there. Like, what
Well, you were talking, we were talking about how you made little clips that Jack.
oh yeah, that's it. So the conventional way to do these things is you shoot for weeks or months or years, and then you take another set of weeks or months of years to edit something, and then you have a rough cut, right? Well, the final chapter of the story, Jack passes away.
No spoiler, no
no,
spoiler there.
no spoilers there. That's what happened. So I didn't want to I wanted him to participate. I mean, this was his idea. He was ostensibly a writer of this film. He was the performer. A lot of it was improvisational, but these are his ideas. I didn't want him never to see any of it. So instead, I mean, in the film world, people call these dailies, but I didn't show him all that would have been boring. Like to go, if we shot for an hour, I'm not going to show him all hour of the footage. I would cut little highlight reels, but I just wouldn't cut the highlights and edit the highlights. I'd put it to music and try to, find the laughs in there and the funny things and the visually interesting things. So we made a series of about 15 little 3 and 4 minute YouTube videos. We didn't try to distribute them beyond just our friends, but we called it A Few Minutes with Jack. That was the operative title. And this was a way that when someone, I mean, it's kind of a cool idea. Think about that. Like, if you know that someone that you love, who you love, has limited time, and yet all of us, very few of us, I should say, stop what we're doing. We have jobs, we have kids, we have all these things. We're not going to stop what we're doing, and we're pressed for time in this busy, highly connected world. So I we would get together, I would shoot something, cut together a little 3 or 4 minute reel or little story, gave it a title, and it had a funny opening line, opening music. And that allowed all of us, even those who weren't able to come see him because of distance or busyness, to spend a few minutes with Jack.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Such a sweet way for the community to come together in this visual and verbal way that Jack had. One of the things I really, really loved about the movie is the title, Jack Has a Plan. And on the one hand, you go to the film and well, Jack has a plan, and this is that he's going to end his life before this brain tumor robs him of all capacity. But there were nuances to it, and I don't think it gives anything big away to say that there's a really moving piece with his wife towards the end. And it sort of surprised me, and I loved it, where she said, Jack had a plan, and the plan was to be with friends and family until the end. And I thought, oh, that's what the title means, And I think Jack had a plan to make a movie that would show a story, and Jack had a plan to end his life, and Jack had a plan to love his family and friends to the very last moment. So there were these great layers to the title that I just thought was,
I mean, it was weird. It was almost self-fulfilling or something. Like our good friend, mutual friend, Matt Urbarn, who's a writer, came up with the title. And as soon as it hit, I was like, yeah, that's a good. And then once we had the title, we were continuing to edit, and then people kept talking about like it was already in the footage, but his mother-in-law, who loved him dearly, was his de facto mom. She said, I don't know if I'll ever understand that this is your plan to do. Like, there's that word plan again.
yeah.
The word plan kept creeping up after, like, it just emerged, like so many other aspects of this project.
Yeah, it really unfolded in such a great way. There were just so many moving parts to this film, and I don't want to talk about it in a way that gives it away, but there's this. I think it's really wonderful that the midsection is really about kind of Jack coming to terms with limited time, and given that he had limited time, two people that he wanted to reach out to were his parents, who he was not in contact with, and so he goes on this extensive, totally serendipitous thing that turns out finding his father, that was, really is one of the real heart pieces in the film, his father's response to him showing up.
Totally. They were separated when Jack was 3 months old. And the parents were separated, and he lost track of his father. So there were 55 years there that he did not have, that was a gap between being 3 months old and nearly, a third of the way through his 55th year. And then they had, to make up for lost time. But what you're describing is the kind of the structure of the film is it's classic 3-act structure. Like the first act is, and there's almost like an allegorical feel to it. It's a documentary, but it feels like a narrative story. And so the first third is we get to know him, we understand his condition, right? And then we see that his days are numbered, And then he goes into the second act, which is
This
all about
quest. Yeah, this
family.
quest.
It's
Yeah.
all about like feeling good and understanding who, like, again, these like unfinished business like, this is not a medical film. It's about medical aid and dying in a sense, but it's not a medicalized film. So the second act is about all those personal things that really make you connect with him and see him as a whole person. And then finally in the, you know, the final third, it comes back, you almost forget, like, wait a second, like, is he ill? You know,
Mm.
like, oh yeah, that's what this is about. Like, you remember, and that, and then it just, I think it gives a richness to it that that audiences have really responded to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see the love of his friends too. And I thought it was so really powerful also that even right at the end, right at this party with his dear friends, at the very end, when he knows the time that he plans to take the medication, his friends are kind of still arguing about it. And arguing isn't even quite the right word. They're still discussing this, and they're
Yeah.
the ethical issues of it. And the one friend says so clearly, you know, if he was going to die by shooting himself with a gun, I would stop him. So how is this any different? And you capture that on film. I don't know if it's you filming or somebody else, but so
No, I
beautiful.
was filming. Yeah, I mean, this was
Right
all
there.
shot. I shot all this completely myself because I didn't want to have a crew and, you know, encroach upon these personal scenes.
Wow, wow. So right there in the final like social party and goodbye party and sort of love fest, there's also this intense philosophical debate going on among his friends. Like, I don't feel okay about this. Well, I don't either, but it's his choice. And what do we do? And I just, that to me was really moving, that it didn't have some kind of neat resolution. Like everybody was on board and everybody supported Jack's plan. It's like, no, this was really hard. And there was still respect for Jack's plan.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when the lights come up when we show it in movie theaters, and there's, I know it's having an impact because you can, you know, see people laugh. They, at one point they cheer. People are, you can hear the sniffles. People are crying, and so there's not like a giant round of applause at the very end. I mean, there's a good side of applause, but it's not giant because people are baffled. The audience, like, that's what you want, like, because that's how life is. Like, you want, that's the, like, that's good to me. Good storytelling and good art is not neat tidy packages, but provoke thought, provoke feelings,
I
right?
yeah, I think you leave the audience wrestling. Like you really, as the audience member, you say to yourself, wow, what would I do?
Yeah.
I think that's a really, like you said, a powerful film. I mean, what do you hope audiences take away from the movie?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I wanted. I mean, that's, I mean, I don't, there's no neat packages in terms of what I wanted, but I think what happens is, um like, let everybody sort through these issues themselves. Like, first of all, realize that, like, it's okay to talk about death. Jack was so open about it, right? This is a taboo that needs to come down so that we can have discussions. um Secondly, that the individual, as it didn't make it to the film, but I've one of our friends said, you don't know what anyone's feeling till you've walked a mile in their moccasins. That's how he cutely said it. It's like, the Jack got to decide. We we might not agree. We might, nobody, not everybody needs to agree with what the person who's going through the dying process is experiencing or wants, but it's not up to us, it's up to them, right? So we can have these two conflicting feelings in our mind at the same time. And those, I mean, that's another part of the baffling nature of it, is that you can say, I don't want you to go. I'm going to miss you a lot. I like, can't you stay another day? Can't you stay another month? Isn't there, isn't there some way we can work our way out of this? Just buy some more time. Um, and so you can have all those feelings about not wanting to lose your loved one, and at the same exact time have kind of an opposite feeling, which is, you know what you want, you know where the line is drawn, And so I can respect that.
The word paradox comes to mind, right? It's this exquisite paradox of believing in Jack and trusting his truth, and then having your own conflicted feelings and mixed up
Yeah.
response to it. And I guess it's like the friends and family shown in the movie, they really had their own response and emotions while also making space for Jack. It was really, I thought it really also captured how death is a communal event. And
Yeah.
even though in the very, very final bit, it's Jack and his wife, Jennifer, am I right?
Yeah.
And it's really Jack and Jennifer right at the end. At the same time, it was very much a communal experience of dear friends.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think another reason that we kind of got lucky in terms of the filmmaking is that Jack was so good at having friends. You know, he was he was a good friend to so many people, and everyone rallied around him. And it was a group of like articulate, loving people. So, and kind of all of the same open spirit of dialogue. And so like a lot of, I think, I mean, you know better than I do, is in your work as an end of life doula endeavors to that probably, some people are afraid to talk about it, or they don't want to talk about it, or some other folks just, too many issues come out. But we were just good, very long-term friends. And so it just opened up the possibilities for us to, again, kind of a paradox, like we could disagree, right? But nobody stormed off, got mad, and turned the table over and said, you know, you know, I'm out of here, right?
Right,
Like
or I can't be friends. I can't be
I
friends
can't,
with you
this
anymore.
is over. Like,
Fine.
I can't deal with this anymore. We all just, even like you say, right up to the very last sentence, like, what do we like? It's the confounding nature of death itself in a way. It's like,
Yeah.
it's inevitable.
Well, I am so grateful that, Jack had this idea of capturing it on film, not really knowing where it would end up. And you rose to that challenge and said, okay, I'll try to film this and see where it goes. And then, you really gave a nice shout out at the movie theater where we met, to the whole team, that it really was
Yes.
a team that made it so coherent. Oh, one more funny thing I have to mention is I
Yeah.
just loved the little funny black and white old movie clips
Uh-huh.
that were interspersed. And that was part of the thread of the story that I think captured Jack's sense of humor and the whole kind of liveliness of it. I mean, when the mad scientist mixes up a potion and slugs back the drink from some
Yeah.
1940s black and white film, it
Yeah.
just added, I don't even know, it's not like it added levity. It almost added, I don't know, culture, weight. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
such a cool
Yeah. We needed a way to get inside Jack's head a little bit. Also, like a little bit of a palate cleanser. Like let's see where we are, and like take a big step back and take a, think about the like levity, humor, kind of artistry, um, like distance, and then so when you pop back in, like right after that shot of, I forget what it was from.
like from Frankenstein or something.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that.
I have to look it back up. I forget. So the mad scientist takes the potion, and then it cut right to Jack's face, like looking a little bit like that scientist, frankly, because he saw the ability to, to work a little magic in his own life or death.
Yeah. Well, it was just a brilliant film. So when and where and how do people see this? What's happening with distribution with independent films these days?
It's not easy. We first of all, jackdocumentary.com is or facebook.com/jackdocumentary are ways to follow our tour. It is, continuing to make its way across the country. We're adding more stops as well. So that's one way. If you don't see it coming to a theater near you, use the contact form and say, oh, I would love to bring it to here. Like, we've worked with end of life doulas to bring it to different communities. We have, and then Diane, you and I, we're going to work on having a special podcast screening sometime in the next couple of months.
Yep.
So we're figuring it out. We haven't made some major breakthrough where it's in every Cineplex throughout the country, or it's not necessarily on a major broadcast or cable casting or streaming service at this point.
Not
But maybe
yet.
not yet. But maybe someone in the earshot of your podcast will say, "Oh, I know how to do this." But we believe in the story. I mean, this is the main thing. You were in the audience, like we had 2 audiences of about 200 each in Boulder, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house, and the impact, like people get up afterwards, and it's not just to like tout my great team's filmmaking skills, which they definitely have. It's the fact that something happened. Like we captured a little magic in a bottle of lightning in a bottle of this incredible life story that happened. Right, it just happened, and I was lucky enough to get it and to tell it. And so every time we show it, people say, I will never, I mean, multiple people, every showing, and who knows how many people think it, but don't say it. I will never forget this story for the rest of my life, or I've never felt like this in the theater before. So now it's just, we want to take maybe we've shown it 40 times or 50, that's a lot, 40 times, 50 times. We want to turn that into 1,000. So anybody who's hearing this that wants to help us get to those 1,000 screenings, I mentioned the websites, or they can contact you and we can figure out how to do that.
Great. I love it. Again, it's jackdocumentary.com.
Yes.
And I've been talking with Bradley. Thank you so much, Bradley, for making this film and for talking to me today.
Thank you, Diane. Thanks so much for this exposure. Every little bit helps, and it's a whole community, and there's a whole move, as you know, you're part of it. There's a movement underway, and I'm glad that the film could kind of help spur that along.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks so much. You've been listening to the Best Life, Best Death podcast with Diane Hullett and Bradley Berman. And you can find out more about the work I do at bestlifebestdeath.com. Thanks for listening.